Hello, I am Brittany Handura, real estate agent, coach, and investor. And today we are going live just like we do every Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So join me live and chat with me in the comments. But today I stumbled upon a message from the president, and I wanted to share this because this is to realtors, and it was posted to the Instagram where I saw it was posted to the Instagram for National Association of Realtors. And so, I would say most, or not most, but a lot of realtors tend to lean a little more conservative, just because we deal with housing. There's, like self-employment, all of that kind of thing that a lot of times leans a little more to the red. But in my area, a lot of realtors lean a little more blue. I think just because in general in my area, there's a lot of things that need to be addressed with housing crisis specifically and things like that, that really are not being addressed by people on the right. And so it was funny because I saw this pop up and they had the comments turned off. So I was like, well, that's telling. One of the things they said was that the NAR conference or whatever has had 9 presidents, and they specifically said Trump was able to come and give a message, send it in virtually. So I thought that's interesting. Why did they say that? Did other presidents come in person and he sent it virtually? I don't know. So that was a little weird. But I want to walk through this with you because some of it is ridiculous, but some of it I think, okay, let's just see what this means for us, for the housing market. Let's talk through what all of this could potentially mean. So I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to share my screen and I want to show you what he is saying, and then we could talk about it. So here we go.
A very special hello to everyone at the National Association of Realtors. I love people that are in the real estate business. I have a little bit of a proclivity for it. You play a vital role in helping Americans achieve the dream of homeownership, and together we will make the American dream more attainable than ever before.
So let's stop it right there. First of all, how are we going to make it more attainable when housing prices are just going up and up, and affordability is, housing affordability is at like an all-time low right now, and it's only getting worse. So how are we making it more attainable? Well, I don't know. Let's see. Let's keep going.
We are working to rapidly defeat inflation.
Through tariffs? I don't know if that's going to work.
Which will bring down interest rates and put home ownership within reach of millions and millions for the first time in years.
So it'll bring down interest rates, which is the biggest thing that is stopping homeowners right now. So that is true. I agree with that one, that we want interest rates to come down so that people can afford housing. Because right now, as we talk about really every single week, the problem right now is that, especially in my area, a single family house, like a starter home, quote unquote, is $800,000. So if you put a 7% interest rate on that, that's going to be unattainable for many, many people. So instead of saying, well, what can I afford? Well, I could only afford a 2-bedroom condo, maybe. They're just saying, well, I would rather rent a 4-bedroom house because I have a whole family or whatever. So it does still push home ownership out for so many people. So interest rates coming down is a big deal. But how do we get there? Well, first off, one of the things that we know to be true is that these tariffs are really not going to be doing anything. And already we saw interest rates starting to go down, tariffs were put into place, and interest rates went up. Why is that? Part of the reason is because with the volatility of the market, it made US credit lower than before. And as we all know, because you guys join me here every week, the mortgage interest rates are tied more to the bond and treasury market than they are to the stock markets. And so when that bond and treasury market are affected, mortgage rates are impacted. And so that's exactly what happened. The US credit was deemed less worthy. And so the bond market was impacted. And so it made mortgage rates go up. So when you're talking about this, he's saying these things like, oh, these are good, positive things. But the reality is the things that he has implemented so far have not done anything to help. If anything, they've gotten worse, because remember, interest rates were starting to come down a little bit. Now they're back up over 7. So there's really nothing that is, well, let's just keep seeing what he's saying is going to benefit us.
In April, inflation was just 2.1%, much lower than expected and much lower than the previous administration, which set record levels of inflation.
Okay, this cracks me up, because I think, first off, why do you continue pointing back to the previous administration? It's done, it's gone, get over it. Like, live in the present. But whatever. That is neither here nor there. One of the things that he's talking about is the record levels of inflation, but we had come off of an extremely mismanaged pandemic, which was under his term. But okay, we had just come off of that, and so inflation was out of control, and it was coming down once he took office. And now with tariffs and all of these kind of things that he's like, won't he implement, all of that and those are inflationary measures. Those make it go up. So while it's true, inflation has come down because it's just the downward trajectory from the previous administration. Because of that, we are seeing inflation rates going down. But remember, when inflation rates go down, it means that you don't have to have lower mortgage rates. So the inflation rates going down make it good because it's cheaper for Americans to live their lives. It's cheaper to buy groceries and all of that kind of stuff, to buy gas, to buy stuff. And we see these tariffs going into place, which is saying, okay, well, now that's going to be making everything more expensive again. So inflation is going to probably go up. And now here's the thing. When inflation goes up and there's like tension in the market and it's harder for things to move in the market for the economy, it's worse for the economy, that's when mortgage rates tend to come down, because the things that jumpstart an economy the quickest is the housing market. And so anytime there is a crisis, like a global pandemic or a financial crisis, the banks are falling, all of that kind of stuff, the mortgage or the housing industry is where they want to pour the money into. And the way that they do it is make housing more affordable. The way that they do that is make mortgage interest rates more affordable. So it is a trickle effect, not a trickle down effect. It is a domino effect, let's say, to where actually if things are worse in the economy, then the mortgage rates go down, which is a good thing for buyers. So in one way, I do think that Trump's economy is going to bring about lower interest rates, but not in a positive way. I mean, I guess we like mortgage interest rates to be lower, but it's not because our economy is doing so well. It's because he's doing crazy things.
His income soared by 0.8% in 1 month, almost triple expectations and close to record territory. Mortgage rates are down.
Okay, first off, he was saying, I cut that off a little bit. What he was saying is that personal income has grown, meaning like people are getting raises and things like that. Okay, sure. And we have to factor in the bigger picture. Just because people are having higher income, they're also having to pay more everywhere else because of tariffs. When you put tariffs on, it taxes everybody. So now everything is going up. Prices are going up everywhere. All manufacturers are saying, I shouldn't say all. most manufacturers are saying, yes, we have to increase prices because of these tariffs, because now all of a sudden, all of these countries that we have been doing business with are putting reciprocal tariffs on us. Even if he's backing off and saying, oh, no, never mind, I don't know what I'm doing, they're still putting reciprocal tariffs on us and they're not taking those off. And so they're not buying stuff from us anymore. They are going elsewhere to purchase things. Things are more expensive for us to get. China has said, I just read an article today that's talking about China saying they're not giving their rare earth materials to us, which means that we can't manufacture. Well, I think they manufactured it, but we can't even purchase what they need to make magnets for the EV vehicles. And so the only way that we can make them on American soil is to basically downgrade what we have. It's not as efficient, not as effective, and a worse product. But now China's saying, well, we're not giving that to you because we don't want to deal with this guy. So really, this is not good. This is not a good thing. And he's trying to say it like, oh, personal income has gone up. Yes, and we need to look at the big picture, because just because some people their income is going up, there's a lot of people whose income is going away. I don't know about you, but I know a ton of people who've lost their jobs recently due to layoffs because companies can't afford to manufacture here. They cannot afford what's coming. And because of this tariff uncertainty, it's not like they can say, hold off, we'll bring you back. They're just laying people off. And then if things change, they're figuring out how to do the work with less people. So I'm very interested in the jobs reports in the next couple of months, because right now we're still seeing that the jobs are okay. And I think that coming up in the next few months, I'd be very surprised if the jobs were not starting to decline rapidly, because these tariffs are making it so that nobody can afford to do business here. The businesses that are currently here trying to do business, they can't afford it anymore. So I would be very interested to see what's coming. All right, let's jump back in.
We're slashing on that.
Okay, sorry, he's talking about mortgage rates. Let me rewind that a little bit.
0.8% in 1 month, almost triple expectations and close to record territory. Mortgage rates are down.
Mortgage rates are not down. Mortgage rates are up. So I don't know what he's saying. Maybe down from one time they touched 7.8 and now we're at 7.2. I don't know. But mortgage rates are not down in comparison to a couple months ago.
Unnecessary regulations, and we are working to pass the largest tax cuts and reforms in American history, which will.
Okay, let's talk about this for a second. So the tax cuts that he's talking about cutting, absolutely. These are going to be huge tax cuts. And what will happen with that is that it puts us into a deficit. And so our country is going to be in a deficit, which will mean one way or another, it has to get paid. And who pays it? The taxpayers. Even though there are these tax cuts coming, realistically, when you look at a table, the tax cuts for the poorest are extremely low, and the tax cuts for the highest are extremely high. So when we talk about actual dollars, the tax cuts for the poorest people, or even the average person, is going to be maybe equivalent to maybe $1,000 a year. Maybe for the poorest, definitely not. It's less than that. But for the wealthiest, they're going to be seeing like hundreds of thousands of dollars, 6 figures in tax cuts. When we're cutting Social Security, my grandparents were on Social Security. I had 2 grandparents who were both living on Social Security. That's all they got. They didn't have any kind of pensions, retirement, anything else. Living off of Social Security. They could not afford anything. They could not afford to buy a house. They couldn't afford anything. And they are on Social Security having, maybe it was like $1,300 a month. They're living in Southern California on $1,300 a month, figuring out how to get by. And now we're seeing Social Security cuts for people like them. But don't worry, the richest are getting tax cuts. How does this make sense? Make it make sense. I'm not seeing the benefit there. So first off, Trump said, okay, there are these, the mortgage interest rates are going down. Not true. They're going up. And they're saying, he's saying that Americans are going to be making more money or are making more money. But the reality is you have to look at the bigger picture. So let's keep going because there's more in this.
Turbocharge our economy like never before. Nobody's seen anything quite like it. I want to thank the realtors for your support of the one big, beautiful bill, the most important piece of legislation in many years. This landmark.
Okay, first of all, you do not have my support of this big, beautiful, horrible bill. This is a terrible thing. This is not, there's very little in this that is going to benefit the average person. Maybe tax breaks for people who want to buy gun silencers. No, thank you. That's not for me. That's not going to benefit me. But what is in there, like I said, are the Social Security reductions and talking about Medicare cuts, Social Security cuts. All of these impact the poorest people in our communities. But guess what? Who eventually has to take care of those people? The taxpayers still do. So now it's going to come down to like what? Your state taxes. Okay, fine. Your state taxes are going to go up. Property taxes are going to go up. So when we talk about this in relation to your property values or being a homeowner, all this does is tell us in general, there's like one point of this that's going to be improved, but overall, it is going to be a net loss for most people. It is still going to be harder for people to get into a home. It's still going to be harder for anybody to try and come up with a down payment because also they're taking away all kinds of different federal programs for first-time home buyers. They don't want to give them an upper leg. They want them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. So there's all kinds of stuff that's in this that is like not good. And yet it's being pushed by so many people as this wonderful thing. But the reality is, and I have more stats on this, but the reality is that it's estimating adding $2 trillion to the national debt. That comes from somewhere. And where it comes from, well, even with the cuts that he's talking about, it still adds $2 trillion. So even if you take away resources from the poorest people, that how we have to, all of this foundation of our society comes when we all work together. We're all figuring this out. And when we talk about taking all of these resources away from the poorest people, all that does is put a bigger burden on the taxpayers. So even if you're looking at this just from a fiscal standpoint, it still puts a larger burden on the taxpayers. So why are we saying this is good? Like, how are we not using our brains and saying, wait, something's wrong here? Because something is wrong here. And when he is talking about like, this is going to be good for homeowners, it's not. There might be one or two little things that benefit homeowners a little bit more, sure. But it's also talking about like the people who are homeowners now. It's still going to be very difficult for people to get into owning a home. So it's still going to benefit the people who can afford to buy a home. Listen, I'm a realtor. I deal with people every day who are trying to buy a home and can't afford it, or who are trying to buy a home and they have like oodles of money of cash. They're buying $1 million, $2 million home in cash. I see it all. And this is how I make my money. So I am not trying to sit here saying, oh, nobody has any money. We need to become a socialist society and everybody needs to be equal and blah, 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 blah. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is take away some of the hurdles, because that's what we have here. We have just hurdle after hurdle after hurdle for people trying to get into their first home to be able to build equity and get into their second home and all of that. You know, I talk to people who say, oh yeah, I've been in my starter home for 20 years because it was supposed to be our starter home and we just never left. But in my area, people really don't have that luxury because my starter home was a 2-bedroom condo. And in that time, it was still pretty pricey for just me and my income because I was single at the time. And so I needed to rent out a room. Now, granted, I bought this place knowing that's what I was going to do. I was already having that investor mind, so I already knew the house hacking and all of that. But like I had to do that. If I was a family of 4 who was used to renting because this is just how my family came to me, all these kids and all that kind of stuff, I would not have been able to say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice and get into a 1 or 2-bedroom condo. I would need to have a house with a yard and all that stuff. So these people who say, I had a starter home that I've been in for 20 years, that's great. I couldn't live in my starter home for 20 years. I needed to keep going. I needed to buy. In fact, I'm on my 3rd personal residence and I am still not in what I would say would be somebody's starter home. So, like, we have to put it into perspective and we have to say, like, this is not attainable for anybody and it's not getting any better. It's not getting any better. In fact, everything that we're seeing coming is just getting worse. So let's jump back in and keep listening to what he's trying to tell us.
Legislation, in fact, will preserve the small business tax deductions that so many want and need. So many real estate agents are just demanding. It'll stop trillions of dollars in tax hikes on American families and put more money in the pockets of home buyers by raising take-home pay for the typical family by an estimated $13,000. Think of that.
Okay, $13,000 for the average family. First off, I couldn't find the stats on this. I could not find where that was coming from. But because the reality is that even with there won't be tax hikes, which is what he said, which is okay, sure. This is a good thing for the average person who's thinking about their own family. They're not going to be tax hikes. I'll take that. For me as a real estate agent, what did he say? They're going to be like whatever. The self-employment deductions are going to be increased. Okay, great. Love that. Sure. But the thing that we still have to say is like, let's look at the bigger picture. Just because it's good for me doesn't mean it's good for society. Just because I'm saying, oh, okay, great. I'm glad that I get more deductions. First of all, the last time he was in office, wasn't he the one that capped the gifts, the tax on gifts to $25? I don't know. I fact check me because I don't know that that's true. But anyway, like it's like he's creating the problem and then he's saying, here's how I'm going to fix it. But anyway, whatever. That might not be true. So let me not say that. Fake news, potentially. But anyway, like this is one of those things that like, okay, great. He's saying that all of these things are going to be fixed. He's saying, oh, the average family is going to get $13,000. My guess is that because there's a child tax credit, but it's like $1,000 per child. So are you trying to say like if the average family has 10 kids? Or like, what are you trying to say? Homeowners do get a tax deduction. Okay, great. And it's based on the interest that they pay, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, great. So maybe that adds into it. But again, we have to look at that big picture. What is it? What does our everyday life look like? Our everyday life looks like buying gas, buying eggs, buying cheese, buying milk. All of those things have gone up and will continue to go up. Meats going up because that is something that we used to trade with China. We used to sell to China. And now China's saying, hey, you're going to be crazy. No problem. I'm going to go get my meats from Brazil or Australia or whatever. They're not coming to us. They don't need us. And so when we look at that, we say, okay, like average on a whole, like Walmart is saying their prices are going up. Costco is saying they're trying to keep their prices low, but how can they? In-N-Out prices are going up. McDonald's, like everywhere you go, prices are going up. Dollar Tree prices are going up. There's everywhere you go, prices are going up. And so on average, statistically, they're saying that there's about a 35% increase. The price increases about 35% with all these because of all these tariffs. So overall, when we're talking about like you're shopping at Walmart, you're getting tires, you're going to get gas, you're going to get, grocery shop at Vaughn's, whatever it is, overall, it's an increase of 35%. But meanwhile, you're over here saying, oh, well, we're going to have a reduction of 2%. Yeah, that sounds nice until you compare it to the rest of this tax that we're getting with the tariffs. So it's not like, oh, it makes so much sense that we're getting all of this. When I talk to sellers about selling their house, I tell them, yeah, you're going to have this fee, you're going to have that fee, you're going to have your profit that comes in, but we're going to look at nothing but net. We're only focusing on the net. What are you going to bring home and put in your pocket? That is the net. That's the same thing as this. We want to talk about what is it that we're actually going to be bringing home. He's saying that the average American is going to be bringing home an additional $13,000. I just don't see how those numbers can add up because also he's saying that has to include, I mean, I don't know, but my guess is that has to include that these people are already homeowners. So they're already homeowners, already taking advantage of the appreciation that they've gotten in the last however many years. And so because of that, they're getting like a tax break. I'm also guessing that he's taking into consideration that they have kids and all of that. So all of this to me tells me like, I don't know. I don't like, where is this coming from? And what is the net? What is the net to me and my pocket? Because I don't care if I get an additional $13,000 if you're taking an additional $30,000 from me. So the net is going to be a net loss of $15,000. I didn't do that math right because I lost track of the numbers, but you get what I'm saying, is that like it is a net loss still. So yes, you can pull these numbers out and make them sound however you want. But the reality is we have to use our brains and we have to say, what is it that we're talking about here? And what is it that is really going on? Because we're not going to get the truth from some of these other sources. So let's keep going and hear what more he has to say about his big, stupid, beautiful bill, because you know how I feel about it.
$15,000. With your help, a record number of Americans will achieve financial independence and find a home that really fits their dreams and aspirations. Something very, very beautiful. What you do is very beautiful. Thank you all once again. Have a great conference.
Financial independence. It's funny because I do trainings for agents on Tuesdays at 9:30 if you want to come. Agents. I do trainings for agents, and one of the things we talk about is building that financial independence. And one of the things about financial independence is really when your income exceeds your expenses. And when we're talking about here, interest rates are so high and people are trying to get in to be homeowners, it really is very difficult for somebody's income to cover all their expenses. Also, specifically, we're talking about passive income. All your debts are paid off. You have passive income coming in that cover all of your expenses. When you have 7% interest rates on your home, it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to say, oh yes, all of my debts are paid off. Everything's good. Because the reality is that it's hard for people to pay this. And now we're saying, oh, financial independence, you're getting financial independence. No, you're not. You're getting more financially in debt. You're getting more locked up. You have those, what we call golden handcuffs. That is exactly what this is. And that's exactly the America that he's creating, is that you're getting locked in to having to buy more and more and more stuff. And everything is more and more and more expensive. This doesn't work out. This doesn't compute. You have to make sure that you, for your family, things are working out for you. And when you have people like this saying, oh, you're going to get $13,000 more because your paychecks are going up, your taxes and blah, 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 all this stuff. This is not reality. This is not reality. This is craziness. And so we have to, I mean, like, I just think we have to call this out. We can't just say like, oh, okay, sure, that sounds good. No, it doesn't sound good because it's not good. Okay, so normally when I do these, I ask ChatGPT questions about mortgages and home buyers and home sellers and all of that. So today I asked ChatGPT, what, based on this conversation, what does this big, beautiful bill, how does it impact home buyers? So let me read to you what ChatGPT says. So it says extending individual tax cuts. This keeps lower individual tax income keeps lower individual income tax brackets in place. So the lower income people, their tax brackets are not increasing. Okay. It could increase after tax income for many households. Could increase after tax households. But look at this with the big exclamation point. But higher income households benefit disproportionately. So when we talk about those people who need to get into houses, who need some of that first-time home buyer credits, who need like a lot of that kind of stuff, they're not going to see this benefit like the people who probably already have homes. Like the people who are probably already owning homes are probably already in there. They're not going to see this benefit in the same way. So again, you just have to look at it and think about what is the bigger picture? What is the overall story that this is telling? Because right now, it's not telling a good story. Okay, expanding small business deductions. So this is one of the things he mentioned. It expands small business deductions, so for realtors like myself, sole proprietors and small business owners could deduct more, potentially increasing disposable income. Now, this is something too, though, that when you talk about like being a homeowner, if I make $200,000 a year, but I deduct so much that on my taxes, it says that I actually only make $50,000 a year. That is what the mortgage companies go off of. They're going to say, oh, you only make $50,000 a year. You can't qualify for an $800,000 mortgage. So that's the same thing for all small business owners, is that you have to really think about, like, just because you can take all these deductions, is it going to benefit you in the long run? So I know that's just like a subset of the people who are here, so we won't belabor that, but is, something to think about. Preserving mortgage interest deduction protects or slightly expands the mortgage interest deduction, a benefit for homeowners who itemize. So I don't know about you. I don't know how it is in your state. I'm in California. And so I already have the max amount that I can take without itemizing. It already gives me, like, the standard deduction is better. So so me being in California in not a low priced area, this already, like, I already get this. I don't need any additional benefit. And now it's saying like, oh, it's going to benefit you if you itemize. How many people itemize their mortgage? I mean, maybe if they're in a house that is, or their mortgage interest, maybe if they're in a house that is like millions of dollars, which a lot of people in my area are. But again, it disproportionately impacts the wealthy. Okay, whatever. We've talked on that enough. All right. It gives number 4, higher standard deduction continued, encourages fewer people to itemizing, meaning many won't use the mortgage interest deduction, lessening the incentive to own versus rent. So interesting, because I don't think I had like let that soak in the first time I read it. But basically this is saying that it's going to increase the standard deduction. So even if you don't take your mortgage interest and itemize it, even if you don't say like, hey, I'm going to use this toward my standard deduction, that's one of the benefits of home ownership, is being able to use that. But the standard deduction is going to be a little bit higher, so you won't need to claim mortgage interest to be able to get that. Is that tracking? So because of that, it's saying it doesn't incentivize people to become homeowners. This is something that I wouldn't necessarily say is an incentive to become a homeowner. I think it's one of those things to say, like, yeah, home ownership is expensive, so here's here's something to kind of help offset that. And basically what this is saying is that that's irrelevant at this point. And I think that too is going to make it so that, like, the homeowner deduction is, or like it's saying, like, the rent to own people, my brain is it turned off. It's not going to incentivize to people to buy a home. In my opinion, the tax deduction that you get is not an incentive to buy a home. The appreciation is more of the incentive to buy a home. Like, the feeling that you get being a homeowner is more of an incentive to buy versus rent. The security that you feel being that homeowner is more of an incentive. So to me, this is kind of like, yeah, I see that, but I don't think that is like that big of a deal. So overall, I actually think, okay, this is a fine thing. Let's increase the standard deduction. Great. So let's take a look at the impact on home affordability. So the factor is the take-home pay. The likely impact is a slight increase for middle income earners. It could help with saving for a down payment or qualifying for a larger mortgage. Now, this is, even though this might be the case, this is where we have to look at the bigger picture as a whole. Because even if we say, okay, you might be making a little bit more, you're also paying a lot more in everything. You're paying a lot more in your food, in your groceries, in your landscaping, and like, everything is still going up, and it's going up faster than inflation is going up. Inflation is at like 2%, 2.1%, I think he said. Okay, so if inflation is going up 2.1%, that means everything is going to go up by at least 2.1%. And also, they did say that the personal income has gone up by 0.8%. So does that mean it's not even keeping up with inflation? Also, everything is going up way more than 2% with these tariffs. So when we talk about this, we have to look at the whole big picture. So it's not just you can't just look at this and say, oh, take-home pay is going up for some people. This is a good thing. It is a good thing for those people who it's going up for, but it's not necessarily going to help in general. All right, mortgage deduction helps higher income houses the most. Average earners likely won't itemize, so little effect. This is what I just said, so we can move on. Interest rates, not directly affected, but deficits from tax cuts could push long-term rates up eventually. Even something that we talked about, but this is another good example of how, you see little Blueberry down there? He's so cute. Dougie's sleeping too, but you can't see him. But this is another good example. Are you saying I'm AI? This has to be AI. I am looking at ChatGPT, but I'm saying I'm not AI in the chat. Okay, so anyway, this is a good example of, wait, what are we talking about? Interest rates, not directly affected, but deficits from tax cuts could push long-term rates up eventually. So this is where, again, we look at the big picture. So when we talk about mortgage interest rates, we're really talking about, it's tied more to the bond market, and the bond market is tied to like the US credit, the US dollar. And so if that drops, or if that is not stable, or if things are hurting it, that is what is going to affect mortgage interest rates. The other big thing that affects mortgage interest rates is that it's going to be if and when things come crashing down, guess what? That'll be great for mortgage interest rates. Mortgage interest rates will go down when we have crises happen, when there's a financial crisis of 2008, when there is a global pandemic. We have certain things that will make it so that, yes, mortgage prices drop, or mortgage interest rates drop. So it's stuff that we don't want to have happen. But if that's the case, at least it'll be like a silver lining, right? All right, now next ChatGPT says home prices. So the factor is with home prices, it could increase slightly if demand goes up due to higher take-home pay, but inventory remains low, which is the biggest pressure point. So this is something we talk about all the time, is that it's all about supply and demand. If there's low inventory, like there has been, and high demand, like there's a lot of buyers, then housing prices go up. Now, interestingly, ChatGPT is saying that, well, if more people are going to be making more money, then there's going to be a higher buyer demand. And so it's going to continue increasing housing prices because there's still low inventory. But if you've tracked, like I have, the housing rates across the country, there's been a lot more listings, and we're actually back to pre-pandemic levels. And so when you look at that, the inventory is going up, which should make housing prices come down slightly. But all of the indicators are still saying that now that now that there's more inventory on the market, there's less of a ratio. Like it's not like we have 15 buyers to every one house. Now it's more like we have 5 buyers for every one house. And of course, this is different depending on the area that you have. But it's like you have to make sure, well, not you have to make sure. The reality is that it's all about supply and demand. And so if demand is on this side. If demand is still high and inventory is still lower, even if that goes up incrementally, there's still this divide. And so housing prices are still going to increase. So ChatGPT says they're likely to increase slightly because of what they're saying is like the personal income going up. But I think that realistically, I think that is going to be completely outpaced by what's happening with the tariffs. So to me, I say that's not gonna, it's not gonna be impacted. I think it's gonna be a wash. And if anything, the US price, like the median housing net is gonna go down. So I'm not looking at that as something that they're saying. So let's keep looking at this. Now, this is going to give us an example of what we're talking about. Okay, so here's a middle income family. So household income, $80,000 a year, tax savings, $1,000 to $2,000 annually, depending on filing status and deductions. That's a far cry from 13,000, but who knows what they're talking about. Housing benefit may help cover upfront costs like inspections, moving, or closing, but it's not a game changer in a high cost area like Ventura County or LA, which is where I am. So even if they're saying, okay, well, there may be some benefit, there may be some amount of money that's coming, it's not going to be a game changer. It likely will be $1,000 to $2,000 for the average person. And also making $80,000 a year, you cannot buy a single family house making $80,000 a year. You can barely buy a 1-bedroom condo. I don't even know if you could, making 80 grand a year. So the fact that they're saying, oh, you're going to make an extra $1,000 to $2,000, it's not going to be enough to get somebody in that position into like a single family house that they would want. All right. So the trade-off and risks. National debt, nonpartisan groups like the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget warns that the bill could add over $2 trillion to the debt. Trillion with a T. This might eventually raise interest rates, hurting mortgage affordability in the long run. So again, housing prices are not coming down. Mortgage interest rates could even go up a little bit. If housing prices go up and mortgage rates don't go down significantly, it still makes it so that there is an affordability crisis on our hands. People still cannot afford to get into a house, which is the problem that we have right now. No direct housing subsidies. The bill doesn't address supply, zoning, or lending challenges, which are the real barrier to affordability. So remember, I'm asking about this big, beautiful bill and what it really has. And it's saying in this bill, it doesn't address supply zoning or lending challenges, which are the real issues. That's what we have to say when we're saying we're looking at the big picture. So especially when it comes to talking about like lumber's more expensive, all kinds of things that it takes to build a home, including labor. Who is doing that labor now? Because they're all leaving, including labor. Everything is more expensive. And so now you're looking at brand new build homes are more expensive to build. So the developers are not necessarily incentivized to even develop these homes. The buyers are not incentivized to buy them because they're not getting great deals because the lending practices have to be so stringent. All of these things. The lending practice is being stringent. That's neither here nor there. That's a good thing. We need that because we want people to buy homes who can afford it. Anyway, let's keep going. I digress. Okay. So we have here, so what we really need to do is talk about the supply, the zoning, and the lending challenges. And it really has not impacted that. So let's see. So in summary, who benefits the most? Of course, surprise, surprise, high income homeowners who itemize and have large mortgages. Because remember what I said is that like, I don't even have to do that. And I'm in a fairly expensive area. I still get the standard deduction covers it. So people with large mortgages and these high income people are the ones who stand to gain the most, which, hey, I am not knocking that. I am glad that somebody's going to benefit. But when we talk about what is good for our country, that's not how you do it, in my opinion. Self-employed or small business owners who can use expanded deductions. Okay, great. That's for realtors. And also keep in mind that when you do those deductions, if you're still trying to buy a house, they're going to take into account what you've deducted, and they're only going to take what you've claimed on your taxes. And then average wage earners get a small bump in take-home pay, but limited direct housing impact. Limited to none. I mean, I would say, what is the direct housing impact? In fact, indirectly, those are the people who are proportionately going to be hurt the most. And so this is not something that is going to benefit them in any way. So they're the ones who are going to be hurt because, you know, for somebody making $500,000 a year, it doesn't hurt for eggs to be $7. But for somebody making $50,000 a year, that really hurts. $7 for eggs is tough. When you go to the grocery store and you used to be able to spend $40 and now it's $80, for somebody making $500,000 a year, they don't even notice. But for somebody making 30 grand, that is very difficult. These are the kinds of things we have to think about. So as you think about, as you hear about, oh, these are great things for the industry. These are great things for housing. These are great things for affordability. Listen, I'm an agent. I'm always going to say it's always a great time to buy real estate if you are financially prepared to, because you don't want your house to be a curse. You don't want it to be a money pit. You want to make sure that you are feeling like you can do this. You don't want to be house poor. So when you think about that, yes, every time is a good time to buy. I know investors, and all investors are saying, I buy and sell real estate with under every single president, under every single administration. I have made money. I have lost money. It doesn't matter who the president is at the time. I'm still going to invest in real estate because real estate is still the best investment. And in my opinion, that is absolutely true. And that is what I'm going to stand by. And I can say that and still comment on the fact that there's an affordability crisis. So what are we going to do here? That's what we have to think about moving forward. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. So join me next Thursday, every Thursday at 3 o'clock here on YouTube, where we talk about this kind of stuff, real stuff that happens that have to deal with real estate. And I come at this, whether you're a buyer, seller, agent, or just popping in here for fun, come and check it out. Hang out with me. Real estate agents, I teach a weekly training on Thursdays at 9:30 a.m. Live, totally free. Come and join me what did I say? It's on Tuesdays. Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Come and join me. I'd love to have you here. Thank you guys for coming. I'll see you next Thursday.